Theodore. He's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore likes to do the things that friendly tugboats do. Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Voda, Hank and George, and the harbor master too.
Hello. It's a very busy day here in the big harbor. I have all these postcards to stamp. Excuse me. Hello. Rodney, is that you? No, I'm not your Aunt Ruby, okay? Bye. That's my friend Rodney. He works down in the harbor. He's been trying to call his Aunt Ruby on the telephone, and he keeps calling me by mistake. I don't know. Excuse me. Hello? It's Rodney. Rodney, I am not your Aunt Ruby. No, you nincompoop. Oh. He hung up the phone on me. Well, why do you think he did that? Maybe it's because I called him a nincompoop. I suppose that's not a very nice thing to call someone. Oh, I wonder if I hurt his feelings. Maybe I should ask Hank. Why Hank? Let me tell you about it.
One fine morning, Hank was setting off to work. "Hello, Hank," tooted Constance. "Hello, Hank," called Blue Nose, the sailing ship. "Hi, Hank," called Rebecca, the research vessel. It seemed like everyone in the whole harbor wanted to say hello to Hank. "This is the friendliest harbor in the whole world," Hank shouted out loud. "Morning, Hank," called Benjamin. Hank felt so happy, he whistled a little tune to everyone. Now, Hank's job that day was to move Bayswater barge. "Hello, Bumper Bum," shouted Bayswater. Well, Hank was so surprised that for a moment he thought Bayswater might have been talking to someone else. He didn't see anyone else. "Hello, Bumper Bum," repeated Bayswater, even louder this time. There was no doubt about it. Bayswater was talking to him. It was funny, but that name hurt. It was like someone had bumped him hard. Bayswater just laughed. "Funny name, huh?" he said. "Uh-huh," Hank said slowly. But he still wasn't really sure why Bayswater had called him that. He wasn't sure he liked it. A little later, Hank arrived at the oil refinery with Bayswater. There was a big pile of oil drums on the dock, waiting for Bayswater to pick up. "Let's load my oil drums, Bumper Bum," Bayswater giggled. Well, by this time, Hank just had to say something. "Ready when you are, Barge Bum." Bayswater began to laugh and laugh. Hank began to laugh too. "Barge Bum," he shouted again, and both of them were laughing now. Hank had to admit to himself that it was kind of fun to make up silly names like that. "Hurry up, Bathwater," he hooted. Hank began laughing so hard, his whistle made a funny sound. "Ha ha ha ha," roared Bayswater. "You sound like a big goose. Honk." "Bird bath," Hank shouted right back. The two of them laughed and laughed until their whistles hurt. Well, at the end of the day, after they had finished working, Hank dropped Bayswater off at his dock and began to float home. Then he stopped and turned back to Bayswater again. "See you later, Barge Bum," he shouted. "Hank!" Hank was surprised to see Pearl, the pilot boat. "I heard what you called Bayswater," said Pearl. It's not very nice to say things like that. Pilot pooper, Hank said under his breath. Then he grinned a little grin. Somehow, having Pearl tell him it wasn't nice made saying things like that seem even funnier. Early the next day, the dispatcher sent Theodore and Hank to bring in a cargo ship. Hank could see the cargo ship, whose name was Inverness, waiting for them near the harbor entrance. Now, Inverness had a very pointy bow. Hank's mind began to race, just like his engine. He hurried on ahead of Theodore and pulled up right in front of Inverness. "Hello, Needlenose," he shouted with a great big grin. Inverness didn't say anything. Then Hank puffed along to the back of the ship to help push, tooting his whistle with laughter. "What a funny name I thought of," he smiled to himself. But when Theodore arrived at the ship, something very peculiar happened. Inverness began to lower his anchor, as if he meant to stay right there. "What are you doing?" asked Theodore. Inverness just floated there, silent and still. "Well, don't you want to come into the harbor?" Theodore went on. "No, I don't," Inverness replied in a very cross-sounding voice. "Well, why not?" Theodore asked. As if to answer him, Inverness began to turn away from Hank. Theodore floated along to the back of Inverness to talk to Hank. "Hank," he said, "this ship doesn't want to come into the harbor." "He doesn't?" said Hank. "Why not?" "I have no idea," Theodore said. "He doesn't want to come into the harbor," the dispatcher said when Theodore had told him what had happened. "But why not?" "We don't know," replied Theodore. "Do we, Hank?" "No." "Can you think of any reason?" continued the dispatcher. "No," said Theodore. "No," said Hank. Just then, they heard an emergency whistle. And Foduck, the safety tug, came racing up to the dock, all out of breath. "That ship who was supposed to come into the harbor is leaving," he puffed. "Leaving?" asked the dispatcher. Sure enough, Inverness was on his way out of the harbor. "Well, why wouldn't he want to come into our harbor?" the dispatcher thought out loud. "This is the friendliest harbor anywhere." And then he gazed out towards Inverness as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Theodore," he said. "Yes, sir." "I want you to try to bring him back to the harbor. Please proceed immediately." Theodore didn't waste a beat of his engine. He set off right away after Inverness, with Hank following along. Now they could see that Inverness was already quite a ways out on the ocean. "I wonder where Needlenose is going," said Hank. "What did you call him?" Theodore said, turning to Hank. "I said, where's he going?" repeated Hank. "You called him Needlenose," said Theodore. "I did?" said Hank. Hank had said it without even thinking. "I made it up myself. It's funny." "Well," frowned Theodore, "you'd better not call Inverness that, or we'll never get him to come back into our harbor." "Well, why not, Theodore?" Hank wanted to know. "Because," answered Theodore, "it's not nice." Just then, Hank had a horrible feeling. "Theodore?" he called softly. "What is it, Hank? I really have to go." I think I did. I think I did call him that." "You what?" said Theodore, glaring at Hank. "Hank, oh, sometimes you're such a bumperhead." Theodore was so cross with Hank, he just blurted out the first thing he could think of to say. And that name hurt Hank like someone had bumped him hard. And the next thing Hank knew, a big wet tear appeared from the corner of his eye. "Theodore, you hurt my feelings," he said. "Oh, I didn't mean to, Hank," Theodore said softly. "Oh, I'm sorry." Hank turned towards Inverness. Suddenly, he knew why the ship was leaving the harbor. "I think," he said slowly, "I think I hurt Inverness's feelings." "Well, right now I have to try and stop him," said Theodore, and he raced off after Inverness without another word. Hank knew he wasn't allowed to leave the harbor like Theodore. All he could do was wait. Wait and hope Theodore could get Inverness to come back. Hank watched as Theodore talked to Inverness out on the ocean. Slowly, Theodore began to turn back to the harbor. Hank held his breath. A moment later, Inverness started to turn towards the harbor too. When Hank saw that, he floated right out to meet him. "Oh, thanks for coming back to our harbor," Hank began. "Well," said Inverness in a very quiet voice, "I didn't want to, but Theodore promised that no one would call me any more names." "Well, I shouldn't have called you that name," said Hank, looking very sad. "I didn't mean to hurt your feelings." "Well, you did," said Inverness. "I'm really sorry," said Hank. Inverness was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My name is Inverness." "And I'm Hank," smiled Hank. "And I think, if you give it a chance, you'll see that this harbor is the friendliest harbor in the whole world." "It really is," said Theodore. Well, as the tugs began to bring Inverness into his dock, they felt so happy they whistled a little tune to everyone. And Inverness joined in too. Because, after all, as everyone knows, the big harbor is the friendliest harbor in the whole world.
Oh, I almost forgot that I hurt Rodney's feelings when I called him a nincompoop. You're right. I'll call him on the phone right now and apologize. Thanks for visiting us here in the big harbor. We'll see y'all again next time. Rodney, look, I'm really sorry I called you a nincompoop. No, it's not your Aunt Ruby. This is going to take a little while. Rodney, it's me, the harbor master. Really?
Theodore, he's a tugboat and a friendly tugboat too. A friendly tugboat too. Oh, Theodore likes to do the things that friendly tugboats do. Pushing and a pulling in the great big harbor, in the great big world is so much fun. So many brand new things to discover. Waking with the sun, gotta get the job done. Oh, Theodore and Emily, Vodak, Hank and George and the harbor master too.